important points related to classes. So we discussed about how do we configure members. That means static and non-static members. We learned about the static and non-static members. So technically, while working with classes, we learned about how to declare class, and types of members in class. So we have static and non-static members. Class members detailedly we will see today. We will discuss about that. Right. After understanding the static and non-static, we need to know one more, that is access modifiers in TypeScript. What are the access modifiers in TypeScript? Actually, access modifier, technically we use access modifiers to restrict the accessibility of any member. So access modifiers defines the restriction about how a member is accessed, from various locations. Access modifiers defines the restriction about how a member is accessed from various locations. So that is what actually access modifiers. So technically, we need to understand how to use these access modifiers. TypeScript supports 3 access modifiers for members. One is public, another one is private, another one is protected. Only these 3 access modifiers are present. So we have public, we have private, we have protected. These are the access modifiers we are having. Right. Next, the point is we need to understand how to use this. How do we access and use this? What is difference between public, private, and protected? These are the 3 basic things we need to understand. So technically, what is public, private, and protected access modifiers? Let's see that. So when we are declaring the members, these are the 3 access modifiers. Public is nothing but it defines accessibility for a member in class. Public defines accessibility for a member in class. It defines the accessibility for a member in a class so that it is accessible accessible within the class, so that it is accessible within the class. And by using an object of class, by using an object of class, from any location, That means if you want to access within the class, it is available. You can access within the class. Accessible. Outside the class, public members are accessible by using an object of that class from any location. You create an object for that class in any location, and through that object you can access the public member. So public member is accessible from any location, but only by using the object of the class, object of that particular class, object of the class, right? That is public. I will show you practically. We will see that. We have private. It defines accessibility for a member, in class. Accessibility for a member in class. It is not accessible through any medium. It is not accessible through any medium outside the class. That means you cannot access it outside the class. Through any medium you try to access a private member, it is not accessible outside the class. Private member is accessible only within the class. It is not accessible outside the class. So it is not possible to access outside the class. Through any medium you try with an object of that class or any another class, it is not accessible. That is actually private member. We will see the example, then we can practically understand also. We have another protected. Actually, it defines accessibility for a member in class. It defines accessibility for member in class. Inside the class it is accessible, and it can be accessible outside the class only by using a derived class object, only by using a derived class object. And it is not accessible through any another medium. It is accessible, that means public, private, protected, all three are accessible within the class. Fine. Public is accessible outside the class, but it is accessible through an object of that particular class. So through an object of that particular class. And private is not accessible outside. It is only within the class. Protected, it is accessible within the class, and it is accessible outside the class, but only through derived class object, not even its own object. That means in which class you have defined, You cannot even access with that particular class object. It is accessible only through its derived object. Only through the derived object. That means its accessibility is protected so that even the current class object also can't access it. It is accessible only through its derived class object, derived class objects. How? I will show you one simple point. First, we will just understand this situation, these three. We will understand that situation. Now here I am creating class. So super class, okay. And here a class, derived class. Later we are going to understand inheritance and all those things. Initially, this derived class is extending superclass. What is extend? We already discussed in interface. It is extending. Now, superclass have public. So name is one member, is a string type member. Another private price, that is a number. Okay, protected quantity, that is also a number. These are the three types of access modifiers supported in TypeScript. For the members in a class, we have three modifiers: public, private, and protected. Now, how they are accessible? So see, within the class, we can access all the three. They can be done by using this keyword. All the members are accessible within by using this keyword. That is general thing. Now, how they are accessible outside the class? So here we have a print method. It is some void method. Okay. And the print method is having an object. So we are creating an object. So this is an object obj of superclass type. It is an object of superclass type. So we created an object of superclass type. Now through that object, that means this class object we created. Through that object, how we can access the member. So here we will access the member. How we can access the member? So generally when we are defining obj, through obj is an superclass object. Now can you tell me which member is accessible to this obj? Which member is accessible here? It is an superclass object, no? It is an superclass object. If it is a superclass object, which member is accessible to it? Superclass object so can give only access to name. Others are not allowed. Only name. That means what about public? I told you. What about public? I told you. Public means accessibility of member in class, within the class, and accessible by using an object of the class from any location. Private is not possible. So price you can never access. Forget about that. Protected is accessible. Protected is accessible only through derived class object. But object currently is not derived class object. It is which object? It is which object? It is which object? Superclass object or derived class object? It is superclass object. That means which member is accessible? Only name is accessible. Only name is accessible. Only name is accessible. That means only public. Only public. That means obj dot only name is accessible. Only name is accessible. You can access only name. So this is through superclass object. This is superclass public member, right? Through superclass object. Superclass public member like this. Suppose I have another object, some obj2. So this is obj1. Through obj1 I can access that name. obj2 is a derived type object, derived class object. Now through obj2, which members I can access? Through obj2, which members I can access? I can access name and quantity, public and protected. Am I right? So name and quantity. That means private is not accessible through any source. So that means through obj2, I can access name. Okay. This is superclass public member. And through obj2, I can access quantity. So this is superclass protected member. Superclass protected member. So technically, public is accessible only through the superclass object. And anyone that is derived from that superclass, public is accessible for that. Protected is only for derived. Superclass also cannot access protected member. Protected member is accessible. Protected member is accessible only through derived object. It is not even accessible through the superclass object. So that means public is accessible through derived class and a superclass. Protected is accessible only with derived class. Price is accessible only within the class. That means here within the class we can access. We can't access outside now because it's a private member. You can access only within that. If you want to make it accessible outside, then you have to change its scope dynamically. We can change the scope and make it available, accessible. That you will see in later stages how we can change that. Means just overriding. The point is through other techniques you can make it available outside. So once you defined inside private, it is never accessible outside. It is accessible only within the class. That means it's restricted within the class. You do some manipulations within this class and give it to another public object, a public property. Through that you can access. So you cannot directly deal with it outside. That is what actually the concept of private, right? Every object-oriented programming will have a concept of reflection. So it is not TypeScript, JavaScript or anything. If any technology says OOP, then it says the concept of reflection API will be there. Object-oriented programming means reflection will be there, right? That is the basic thing, right? So everyone understood this approach, how the public, private and protected works. Public member is accessible. You will learn, no worry. What is reflection now? Suddenly some high level questions will come. You will learn why you are in hurry. Somebody asked reflection is there. I said yes, it is there. Now you will ask how to use it. Now another one will come with a question, will you show now? Right? I will tell you when situation comes, we will discuss about that. Right? Let's concentrate on this point first. All right. So here we have a public, so private and protected. These are the three important things. So these are the three access modifiers, access modifiers. So that is general thing you have to know, the public, private and protected. We will use in different occasions and we will see how do we deal with them. So different occasions, how do we deal with them? So syntactically, we define in this way. So obj1 is a superclass object. I'm just using inside that. Actually, suppose I am creating let object1 is equal to new superclass. It is an object of superclass. And through this object1, I am accessing only name. I am accessing only name. I am creating an object, let object2 is new derived class. And in this object2, I am accessing name. And you can see this derived class object is not having the accessibility of this protected. So protected. So here the restriction about this protected is, it is not public, it is protected. Protected means it is accessible within the derived class, using a derived class object. It is not accessible outside it. That is the concept of protected. That means now the definition should be protected. It can be accessible, so within the class, so not outside the class. That means it is accessible outside the class, and within the derived class, only by using a derived class object. This is the definition for protected. So protected is not public. Public means outside the scope of the class, anywhere you can access it. Protected is having certain restriction again. If it is accessible through derived class object, outside the derived class also, then it is not called as protected because it is public. It can be accessed in public. So that means here protected is protected members are accessible through a derived class object within the derived class only. Through derived class object within the derived class only. They are not accessible outside the derived class. Through to the derived class object only within the derived class, not outside the derived class. That means within the derived class memory, you can access this. We cannot access outside. That's the reason you can see here. It is not available. So you read here what it is saying. It can be accessed outside the class. Outside the class means where it is declared. And within the derived class means outside the class and within the derived class. Only by using derived class object. I hope this is not any confusion or anything wrong mentioned here. Read carefully that point, then you can understand. So I hope everyone understood about this point. That means derived class protected members are accessible outside the class, but within the derived class. Outside which class? Better I will say here, outside the which class? Better I will say can be accessed outside super class. Understood? Then it will be more easy for you to understand. Outside the super class and within the derived class. Understood? Now clear? Right. That is the basic point about how the protected members are accessed. Generally, if I say protected, that means it is still having restriction. If I can access outside, then it is not protected. It is not protected. That means protected is having more scope than private, but still having a restriction. Protected allows to access outside that class, but will not allow to access outside the derived class, within the derived class. That is what I said. It is not accessible now. Within the class only, through that particular type only, it is accessible. Outside the class, it is not accessible now. Object 2 is derived class. Then am I accessing that protect object 2 here? Now one more doubt will come for many of you. Like, so many times you will have a doubt like, I will create an object obj, and here I will create a new derived class object, and through that obj3 I am accessing, so name and quantity, it is available there. Within the class it is available, derived class it is available. Outside it is not available. Name and quantity are available. I hope at least now you understood, everyone. So you create an object within the derived class. Through that it will access. Outside it is not accessible. Outside it is not accessible. So this is, you can create anyway. Object can be created anyway. Right? You can configure and define the object anyway. That means here, so object 1, through object 1, I can access only public. And here through object 2, I can access only public. Even the protected members are not accessible. Only public member is accessible outside the classes. So protected is having a restriction. Protected is having a restriction. So this is a general example you need to understand. So that means if I try to create here in this syntax, I try to create let object 1. Object 1 is equal to new derived. Here also through object 1, I can access only name. So public. So object 1, I am trying to access here quantity, price. This is invalid. So because it is private. And object 1 dot quantity, and this is also invalid because it is protected. So you cannot access, even it is a derived class object, outside the derived class. So protected members are accessible only within the derived class through a derived class object, not even through the base class object. That means through the super class object. That is what actually the concept of access specifiers. How you can define the access modifiers and use these access modifiers. So we have two important options. Yeah, obviously by default, every member is designated as public. Every member by default is designated as public. So if you don't define any access modifier, then by default it will be configured as public. right? Because it uses a general JavaScript mechanism. So where if you don't define the keyword var and you declare a variable, then it will be treated as a global scope. It will be treated as a global scope. That means, can I declare a variable without var, let, or const? You can do that. If you are not declaring with any one of these, but in strict mode, you cannot do that. If you are not declaring with any one of these, then it is automatically treated as global actually. That technique is followed. So in different occasions when you are not defining, generally sometimes it is private in access. Some members are private in access in different languages. But here it will be by default public in access. Public in access if you are not defining the access specifier. But here again, restrictions, hierarchies will be there. So the name I am not defining, and everywhere it is working in the same way. Means we are not configuring it, it is working everywhere same. Because by default it is configured as public. By default it is public, right? So we don't need to configure that public if you want public also, right? So that is generally the access modifiers. What are the access modifiers we can use in TypeScript, right? Right. Yeah, here what is that? Don't, I already told you, don't compare with Java or other languages. So you are learning this language, just learn what it is having, right? No need to compare with any other languages. If you start comparing with other languages, then a lot of variations, technical issues will be there, right? You just learn this language as this language provides the concept to you. That is enough, right? Yeah. So this is generally how the access specifiers are, access modifiers are handled. How we configure the access modifier and deal with access modifier. Next important, after understanding the access modifiers, we need to understand about accessors. Accessors. Yeah, accessors in TypeScript. Actually, accessors, the intention is the accessors will allow to define authorized access to the members. This is scope based access. Access modifiers are scope based. Scope based. Access modifiers are scope based. That means where you declare and where you are accessing. They depend on where you declare and where you are accessing. Accessors usually they are used to give an authorized access to any member. That's good. Authorized access to any member. Authorized access to any member means, suppose one property we design and I given read only for that property, then always it is read only. But it should not be always read only. That means if I define read only for any property, it is always read only. But it should not be always read only. How it should happen is, if my role is admin, then I must able to edit it. That means I will have read and write permission for it. If my role is just user, then I have read only. How you can handle this? That means based on the role, I need to change the restriction for it. That means whether it is read only or read write. Accessors are used to define authorized access to the members. Access modifiers are scope based. That means where you declare and where you are accessing. In which scope you declared, in which scope you are accessing. They are scope based. This is not scope based. This is authorization based, authentication based. It will verify you. That means it can have a property which can change according to situation. A property's accessibilities can be changed according to the situation. That generally we can do by using accessors. That means actually TypeScript supports getters and setters as a way of getters and setters as a way of intercepting access to a member of class. Intercepting the access means changing the access to the member of a class. So accessors allow to define authorized access to any member. So accessors allow to define authorized access to member. Actually, accessors will give a fine grained control over properties. Fine grained control over, you can say, control over member and its accessibility means more better control on that particular property. Actually, you can restrict get and set of values, getting and setting of values according to the state of application, that is more control over the properties, more control over that property. So generally we can do that by using get and by using set methods, get and set methods. Actually, get, it defines a property name. So get defines a property name, and it uses a return function to return the property value. Set uses the property name. It will take the new value. And it will replace that old value with new value. Now when you are using this getter and setter, we can restrict the authorization. So that means we can have a more control over this. For example, I am showing you how we can set more control over that particular properties. For example, now here, to give a more control over the properties, I am creating a simple class, product. Product is a class. In this product class, I given a private member. Traditionally, I am using some product name. That is traditionally product name, and it is a string type. That means I am just using a camel's case. And as a programmer, you should know that we use underscore as a prefix for any variable name to indicate that it can be holding a value which can be changed according to the situation. That is a program tradition. According to the program traditions, we use underscore for any variable name to indicate our developers that this value of this can be changing regularly, and not regularly, it will be changing according to the state. That means what is the reason behind using this underscore, right? That means the reason behind using this underscore is exactly to understand that it is changing its behavior as per the state. Okay, good. Now important is I want this product name to have a more good control. I need this product name to have a good control. Remember, now this product name is not accessible outside the class because it is private in access. Now many people asked just now, sir, if it is private, how to access outside it? Then we use these accessors to handle that situation actually. For example, see, now what we are doing is we are creating a simple get accessor. It should have a property name. Usually we use the same property name, that means product name, but we will not use the same name, similar name, so that we can understand that this is used, right? It is returning a string, and this is used to handle this property. This is an accessor. Product name is an accessor which is designed for handling this property. Because this property is private, you cannot access it directly outside the class. Now I am using an accessor technique. Through that I will return this dot, so underscore product name. That means it will return that product name. This public, you can access it outside. I hope everyone understood. I hope everyone understood this. That means product name is private, right? And we made it as public through an accessor. This makes it public in access. That means this is an accessor is a method which is returning that private property. That means you can access that property through this reference name. This makes it public. So that is the basic thing. Anywhere the purpose of accessors, right? So that is the purpose of accessors. Get is a keyword, and you cannot combine anything with that get keyword. That's a general thing, right? So return type should be the same as the property type. It cannot happen any different return type. Is it a common question? Is it a sensible question? Right? The property should return only what it is looking for, right? Right. Now, this is returning the value. We can access and use it outside. That means now see here, I'm creating an TV is a new product. We are creating an object through the TV, and you can see product name is accessible. This product name is written like a method, but it is an accessor. It is an accessor for this property. That means this property is now accessible by using this product name. And I can apply some Samsung TV like this. I can define some value into that. But remember, currently, we cannot set any value into it because there is no setter. We cannot set any value into it because there is no setter. There is only getter. There is no setter. We need a setter. If I just give a getter for this, that means it is like read only. You cannot put anything into it. It is like read only. You can see. You cannot assign anything to product name because it is read only. It is read only. How you can make it accept your value? That means now what we have to do is we have to define a setter for this, setter for the same product name, and this setter has to take your value and set the value. That means it has to take your new name. So that means new name is a string type, and it has to set this dot underscore product name is equal to new name. So whatever the new name you passed, now a setter is defined. It will take your new value and it will assign to this. Now it is valid. I hope everyone understood. That means now it is having a setter, right? It is able to assign the value. If I don't give a setter, it will not allow to set a value. It is just like read only. I hope everyone understood this point. That means we can get the value and we can set the value. We can get and set the value. But very important is, I don't want everybody to set the value. We have more control over this property now. How? What I am doing here is I am creating. So here I am adding at the top let. So here I said username. So, or I will create an object. So user details. User details is an any type, and it is an object. This is having a username. So username is admin, and here it is having a password. Password as some admin123. Now important is I need to allow. You can declare an ordinary property also. If username and password both are matching with this, with username and password both are matching. Currently we are using only one. We can do with multiple by using looping statements. Now here the point is, now I need to allow to set the value only for the people who are matching with the username and password. That means this set should not be allowed to everyone. This shed will not be allowed to everyone. Then what I will do here, I will write a condition here. Condition is very simple. So if, see, you can keep it very simple. First, I will keep it very simple so that you can understand. Later we will keep password. Password is equal to admin123, and password is a string type. Okay. Later I will tell you looping conditions and other options also now, right? Now the point here is, if password is mentioned and double ampersand, password means it is not undefined, it is defined. If password is mentioned and password is matching with admin123, then allow to set the value. Otherwise, simply put a message, console.log, simply put a message saying that you are, so you can simply say unauthorized. So unauthorized. So you cannot, sorry, you are not authorized to set value, to set product name. That message we are displaying. Okay. If the password is matching, then it should allow. So that means now here I am trying to set the value. It will verify whether the password is matching or not. Suppose password is something wrong. Admin is the password, but the password we are expecting to set value is admin123. Now let's run this program and see. That means an user is trying to set the value. Who don't have an authorization to set the value. Then tsc demo.ts, and here node. So here accessors and all these available from ECMA script 5 version onwards. So no need to worry about these errors. I am saying about this so many times, so many times. Ankit, you are very genius. You can catch my level. You are very expert in language, right? You can no need of that, right? You can understand, right? So now here you can see here, I told you so many times that these type of errors will come regularly. These type of errors will come very regularly. Why? Because still now we haven't configured the versions for TypeScript and JavaScript, how to compile, into which version to compile. That I told you that we will discuss in TypeScript configurations when we learn about the configurations. In that case, any newly concepts you are using, it will show an error saying that your JavaScript cannot understand this. But still we know that our JavaScript higher versions can understand them. So forcibly we can compile them, no problem, right? These errors, it is saying that getter setter are targeted only for ECMA script 5 and higher version, right? So here now I am trying to compile this and run this node demo.js. And when I run this, it should say that unauthorized. You are not authorized to set product name. We are not authorized to set the product name because our password is wrong. Our password is wrong. And I am entering the password 123. That means the same password which we are expecting. And with the same password, again, we will compile this and run this. With the same password, we will compile and run this. And you can see that this time it says that, so it is set. After setting, we need to print the value. So we will print the value also. We set the value. After setting, we will print the value. That means console.log. So here I have to print. So TV is TV name. Name is equal to. Just we need to access TV dot product name. That is through get accessor we are accessing it. So remember, you cannot use this underscore because we are right. I will save this here and I will compile and run this because I am printing also now, right? I am printing. And when I compile and run this now, so you can see it is printed. That means name Samsung TV. If password is wrong, that means anything went wrong here. Some password is wrong. That means it is not the same as we are expecting. Something wrong in the password. So if that is wrong, anything wrong in the password, and you try to run this, and you can see here. So, and I run this. So node, right. So here node demo.js, and you can see that now it says, so unauthorized. And it shows one more option that it is not defined. Why? Because you are expecting to return a string value. That means you need to check for that condition also. That means you have to check for the condition also. That means here you have to write one more condition. What is the condition? If it is string and it is matching, then do this. Otherwise, don't do this. Don't set the product name and don't print the product name at all, right? Multiple conditions. That's the reason I shared that in the previous point I told you. We can check username, you can check password, we can verify both are matching or not, then we can configure. So I entered here admin. So this is a wrong password defined. That means wrong password defined. We will compile this here and we will run this. That is the wrong password defined. We will compile and run this demo.js, and you can see that it says unauthorized. And name is undefined because we are printing it. We don't want to print if it is not there. That means it is not allowing to set the value and you are trying to print it. So you can write a condition. You know that if tv.product name is equal to undefined, if it is equal to undefined. So here I don't want to print, then console.log. So here, so name, I will simply say name is read only for this user. Name is read only for this user, right? You cannot set a value. Else else it has to print this value. That is all we have to handle the condition, because if name is not provided, it is undefined, it should say name is read only for this user, he cannot set the name. For other users he can set the name. That means I configured here now, compile and run this. We can avoid that undefined because we are printing that undefined. And node, now you can see that it says unauthorized. You are not authorized to set product name. Name is read only for this user. Name is read only for this user. Okay. Now I am entering the password. I am entering the password. So correctly, that is 123, the password correctly. And I will compile and run this. So I enter the password correctly and I run this, and you can see that. And you can see here, so then it says only the name. It will not return that undefined point because we have to write for every condition, right? Immediately it will show some error, but we have to address all the issues. So accessors will give more control on your property. Accessors allows you to get the value and allows you to set the value. This setting of value has a more control. So not just about the scope, it is about the state of the application also. That means, is the condition matching for that? Is the situation matching? If the situation matching, it will allow to set the value. If situation is not matching, it will not allow to set the value. That means I want one property to change its behavior as per the situation. At certain stages, it should be read only. At certain stages, it should allow read and write. Then this is possible by using accessors. That is possible by using accessors. So we defined a property and we are configuring the accessors. Get and set accessors can be simply used, but this time we are verifying the password, and according to the password, we are allowing to set the value and displaying some error message. And this is general example how we can handle the accessors, how we can configure the accessors. Access modifiers and accessors. These are the two important things you need to know in TypeScript, especially while working with members. So we need to know about these two. Now we can start discussing about the different types of members in this TypeScript class. Different types of members means constructor and properties and methods and accessors already we discussed it now. So we have constructors, we have properties, and we have methods. Now we need to understand what they are. What is constructor, what are properties, and what are methods. That we will see in tomorrow's session, right? Hope you are clear with these two topics, that access specifiers, access modifiers, and accessors, right? Everyone is good, and everyone is sending a message saying that they understood everyone. Everyone understood the point. What are accessors? Yes. So everyone is able to understand the concept of accessors, right? Everyone says good. Okay, then good. If you still have any problem in understanding, no problem. I will explain again when the situation comes one more time, no problem, right? You can understand, right? In OOP concept, there will not be any attributes, Mr. Abhilash. There will be no attributes. You are talking about attribute property related to HTML. Everything in OOP class we write is property. Set accessor is not a method. Don't think them as method. Set is not a method. Na? Here this is, don't think that these are methods. These are the accessors for that property. Understood? This you have to treat as property only. Okay, that is not a method, and you are calling